Hey, what's up, y'all? It's Aquila Beats, and today I'm going to be breaking down the music theory behind Polo G's new song off his album The GOAT, Beautiful Pain. So I actually put a lot of research into this song and looking up. First I had to find out what the actual notes were that he was playing out on the guitar, but it's a super duper interesting chord progression, very interesting melody. And I guess we can first get right into it. So I kind of estimated with my tempo. I did a tempo tapper, but given I don't have the best tempo, I'm white. But it's 157 BPM, or at least right around that. And I found that it was in C sharp minor. But the interesting thing is that he actually borrows a C note from outside of the scale. So he uses that in there, which I'll talk a little bit about later. So first off, what this melody is, actually first let me let you hear it. So as you can hear, it's, pretty interesting melody, but the chord progression it is a 1-3-6-5. And I'll go into more specifics about that. But what this melody is it's an arpeggiator, and an arpeggiator is just where it's a very common thing you do on the guitar. It's where you play the notes of the chord, but just like a melody. So instead of playing, say, this first chord, which is C sharp minor, instead of playing that all at once, whoever's on the guitar plays it out in a melody so that it's going up and it's not hitting at the same time. So instead of it being a chord, it's more of a melody. And this is, like I said, very common for guitar players, and it kind of helps add more movement to your melody. And as you can see, the arpeggiator, the top note for every single one of these things, or for every one of these little sections, is the bass note of the chord. So as you can see, C sharp minor ends on a C sharp, E major ends on an E, A major ends on an A, G sharp major ends on a G sharp. And one actually pretty cool thing that I noticed that you can do with this, it's just the power of using notes in the chord in your arpeggiator. So if you remember what it sounds like when you end it off on this bass note at the top, this is what it sounds like. But one thing you can do is you can use the middle note or the top note instead. So let's end it on the middle note every time. And this is something that I do all the time, but it adds a completely different feel and it just sounds like a little bit cooler. So here's how it sounds. So as you can hear, it kind of sounds a little more poppy, if I'm being honest. But that's kind of just an extra little thing that I wanted to add in there. So to go back to the chord progression, like I said, it's a 1-3-6-5. So what this first chord is, it is the tonic. So the tonic chord, that is, it's called the 1 chord within scale degrees. And all these are called scale degrees. So the first chord, the 1 chord, its scale degree is 1. And kind of the function of the 1 chord is that it shows a lot of comfort and resolution. So, and it kind of tells you what scale you're in. So if you start on the tonic, it's very clear that you're in that scale. So we start on C sharp minor, we're in C sharp minor. So that's the kind of the function of the 1 chord. And this is a pretty common chord progression. It's a 1-3-6-5, like I've said. And then the 3 chord is the median. And this is just, it's just, you're just going on a simple chord progression. So that's what you do. But then the 6 chord is called a submedian. And what this is it's a great transition over to the 5 chord. And what it does is it adds a lot of sadness to melodies, or at least that's what I found from my research that I did. It said that having the 6 chord adds a lot of sadness within your chord progression, but in this case a melody. And then the 5 chord is the dominant. And the dominant chord, it said it's need to be resolved, and it adds a lot of tension, and it needs a place to quote-unquote go home. So once you hit that chord, you need to go somewhere off of it, because if you just leave it right there, then you're kind of stranding the listener out on an island. But the interesting thing in this song is that instead of having a B note down there, which is in the scale, Instead, it's a C note. So I'll let you hear the difference between it being a C note and a B note. So as you can hear, it's a very slight difference. But the reason that they added a C here, and it's actually apparently very common in a lot of other genres of music such as jazz, R&B, is that it adds way more tension. So if you've watched Wheezy Works beats before, he literally drills it into your mind that doing half steps down, which is just going from notes that are right next to each other, going between that interval. So let's see, for example, what there is here: C sharp and C. What that does, it adds a lot of tension, and it's a lot different. See, if you go from C sharp to B, which is a whole step down instead of a half step. So this is the half step, and this is the whole step. So you can hear there's nowhere near as much tension. And in a song where it's for like Polo G song where he's talking about a pretty sad subject, or for a beat in general, if you're trying to make something more emotional, having more tension creates more emotion, which is exactly what you want. So as you can see here, instead of going to the B, he does a C. And basically this entire chord is doing a half step down. So as you can see, this E note is going down to a D sharp, the C sharp is going down to a C, and the A is going down to a G sharp. But if the C was a B, then the C sharp would be going down a whole step instead of a half step. So like I've said, there wouldn't be nearly as much tension, which is why they decided to use the C note. And once you're on this 5 chord, the thing, you go back to your 1, which is your tonic, which is your place of home. So that's one of the benefits of like hip hop. It's like a really repetitive melody. It's only 4 bars. But that is basically the breakdown of the chord progression. So now just a few more little tips, I guess, for melodies in general. The velocities in the middle, whenever he's going up in the arpeggiator, are lower. So it's like you can kind of hear them, but it's a lot lighter than the ending. And this just adds more emphasis on the last note. And he does that for all that. And as you can see, you can emulate that by changing the velocities. And then another thing is that at the end of each of these arpeggiators, there are 2 notes being played at the same time, which kind of adds, I guess, a little more fullness to the melody. And then these 2 notes at the very end, those kind of act as a transition that kind of helps the melody not be as stagnant. And what I mean by stagnant is that it's always constantly moving. So if those weren't there, the melody would just sound more kind of stuck and it wouldn't have that unique of a rhythm. Then the last thing is, each one of these is stopped. You can do it on a guitar. If you play all the notes and then you slap all the strings, it completely mutes the guitar. That's what's happening here, and I just emulated it by cutting off the note right before you want the snare to hit. And all this does is it adds more impact, 1, to the snare, and 2, it adds a pretty unique rhythm. But that's basically the video for today. If y'all want any more of these, please let me know, and I hope y'all are enjoying the album as much as I am. And hopefully I'll catch y'all in another video. I'm out. Peace.